Season 3, Episode 6, Stories Unlocked. Nathan Durkin, welcome.
Thanks for having me, mate. Pretty impressive in here just quietly.
Thank you, man. Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Been watching your videos for quite some time. But let's jump straight into it. Run us back as far as you can remember as a little kid. What was it like growing up in the Durkin family?
Yeah, mate, pretty stock standard, to be honest with you. Nothing overly special. I was a only child growing up. Lived with my parents. I think they split up when I was like 5 or 6 or so. So I don't really remember anything different. Very lucky. Got fantastic mum, fantastic dad. Very close family and whatnot. I grew up sort of in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. And yeah, pretty a very stock standard sort of upbringing, to be honest with you, mate. Didn't not a wealthy family or anything like that, but got by, did okay. And yeah, honestly, I wish I had a better story for you of me growing up, but it really was a pretty stock standard sort of life. It's sort of in the last 10 years or so taken a bit of a weirder turn that sort of came out of nowhere, but mate, growing up, very stock standard.
And we'll get into that, but so background, True Blue Aussie?
Yeah, True Blue Aussie, mate. Family just always loved sport. Rugby league in particular, always a big part of our life. My dad, uncles all played footy. We always, I guess, obsessed would probably be a fair way to put it to some extent. And yeah, wouldn't have ever thought it would lead to anything, to be completely honest with you, because I was the most bang average player of all time. I knew that from a very early age, though. So yeah, that's always been, a big part of my life, as has sport. Then yeah, it sort of led me to where I am. Yeah.
Cool. And your mum, your dad, what did they do for work?
Mum, when I was young, was a hairdresser. And my old man, he is a greenskeeper at a golf course. He's been at the same golf course, Moore Park in Sydney, for my entire life, actually. So I've only just got into golf recently. But I wish when I was younger I would have taken it up and taken that opportunity, because I now look back and think, what a waste of 15 years when I could have been on one of the nicer golf courses in Sydney. Instead, I played my Game Boy or did something fucking ridiculous. So a huge wasted opportunity there that I regret massively. So Dad's always been, he starts work at 3 a.m. or something.
Wow.
And then, he used to finish work, come pick me up from school, come coach my footy teams, whatever it was. He was always very heavily involved in all those parts of my life. And then, yeah, mum was a hairdresser, so she'd work long hours as well. Single parents, obviously, and whatnot. So yeah, I also had my grandmother that I was very close with, who I spent a lot of time with when I was young. She passed about 10 years ago or so, but she was a very important part in my life that sort of allowed my parents to work the hours that they did and as hard as they did and whatnot.
In hairdressing, barbering, it's just one of those on your feet all day, relentless. I don't think hairdressers and barbers get enough credit.
Mate, I'm confident they don't. Yeah. It was sort of, I was a kid, so, and when I was about 13, she moved into working at Westpac. So I probably didn't appreciate that, but it is something that I think about even when I get my haircuts.
Yeah,
you walk in there and there's I drive past the place at 9 a.m. The bloke's standing there. I come at 3 p.m. He's still standing in the same spot.
Yes.
It's a long day.
Yes, massive. And to back that up, 6-7 days a week, really, really big. But your parents, would they work on the weekends?
Yeah, I think Dad definitely would. But once again, Dad, he'd start work at 3 a.m. I sort of, at weekends when I was with Dad, I know that he'd be at work, and by the time I'd wake up at 8 or 9 o'clock, he'd be back there. He'd already done 5 or 6 hours or something, but he'd have to sort of go in and out of the golf course. I don't think Mum worked as much on weekends when I was younger. I think she always sort of had that time with me and whatnot. But both did, as a kid, you're just not aware how hard your parents
You're
work.
in Disneyland.
You're just in Disneyland, just doing your own thing. But looking back on it, and both being single parents and both seeing what they provided for me and where they both got to in their careers, it's very evident to me now that they were working very hard at that age. And as you put it really well, I was just in Disneyland doing my own thing.
Yeah. Young kid, 4 or 5 years old. Did they ever take you on holidays?
Yeah, went on a lot of holidays sort of like within Australia. I haven't done much traveling in my life. I've sort of, I think when I was in about year 5 or 6, my mum's best friend actually won what was it called? Lotto. So back then that was 2003. So she won like $1 million or something, which
Wow.
which back then, like it's a lot of money now. Don't get me wrong, but back then,
Yeah,
that was ridiculous.
It would have
2003,
been at least
it was.
$2 million.
Yeah, it was
At
huge.
least,
Yeah. So, so my mum's best friend, who's been a really important part of my life as well, she took her family and me and mum to America for like 3 or 4 weeks, which was just unbelievable. Like, well, I hadn't been outside of Australia, and I've only been outside of Australia once or twice since. But yeah, I sort of a lot of holidays within Australia, sort of, the Gold Coast and these sort of places. With my dad, we always had a caravan park on like the far north coast that we always used to go to every year, and that's, to be honest with you, that's my ideal sort of holiday. We've got a caravan now down at Gerringong, and it's only an hour and a half away. I skip down there.
That's it. Gerringong is that
south?
South.
Yeah,
That's
so just past Wollongong.
just past Wollongong. That's right.
Only about an hour away.
There you go.
It's unreal.
Okay, so 5 years old, public school. Where'd you go?
I was at a Catholic school in sort of eastern suburbs, Waverley, and then I did high school directly across the road at Waverley College. Yeah, so
There you go. And back in public school, running around, were you the popular kid?
no, I wouldn't say I was a popular kid. Not at all. Mate, to be honest with you, we'll get to it later because it's really interesting how it all played out. Like, I'm obviously in podcasting now. I had a shocking stutter when I was a kid.
Okay.
Like really bad. Like S's, N's. So when your name's Nathan, pretty tough gig. Like I literally couldn't introduce myself. It was bad. And it was like that until I was 17, 18. And it was actually quite like crippling to some extent. Like even just being in class and stuff, teacher would ask you to read. And like I'd be so anxious about it. Like I would have, like if she asked you to read, I'd go, okay, the 1 in 24 chance I'm going to have to read the next paragraph. So I'd scan that next paragraph and see the words that started with S and think, shit, I'm not going to be able to say that. I'm not going to be able to say this. I'm going to say this. And you sort of just live on the edge of your seat waiting for, your turn to finally read. And then, I just played it over my head a million times. And it was, I went to like speech therapy and stuff for it. And I kind of feel like with time, it just sort of went away eventually. Yeah. But it is something like I've spoken about on podcasts before. And I like, to me, it was such a small thing in my life. But mate, like the last time I mentioned it on a podcast, I got hundreds of messages from people who have some sort of speech problem or whatever, and just hadn't really heard someone talk about it and the struggles around it and everything. And like, I'm sure that like people that listen to my podcast every single day were absolutely shocked beyond belief because I never shut up now. Yeah. Whereas back then I was almost like scared to talk to some extent. I think that held me back a lot as a kid. Because it
held you back from what as a young kid?
I might communicating, like as simple as that. Because, kids, and like my stutter would be like, if I was trying to say something that started with S, like I could go, like I could do it 12 times before the word had come out. And it's sort of like it just mixed around with my vocabulary a lot because I'd know what I wanted to say. And if I knew it had an S in it, I would pretty much try and find a word to replace that. Yeah. And sometimes it just meant that I just didn't make sense as well. But
then people know you're doing it.
Yeah, but I don't think, like, when I would say something that wouldn't make complete sense, I don't think people would register, he's replaced the word that was meant to be an S with this, like that. If they were, that's incredible. That's a lot to take in 4 seconds or whatever when you're having a conversation. But it was something that I just constantly thought about. As I said, like N's I'd really struggle with. So saying my name, that rattled the hell out of me. Like I remember I was in a PE class in high school and I walked in. No, sorry, we had a new teacher and it was like the first day of the year and they went through the roll and I wasn't there yet. And I was just like outside the classroom when they went through the roll and I thought, if that's what they were doing. They were getting everyone to come up and introduce themselves to to the teacher, and I thought, oh, if I walk in now, I'm going to have to say, hi, I'm Nathan, which I physically couldn't do. It just rattled me. So I thought, okay, I'll wait until the end. And then when I walk in, the person will know that I'm the only one they haven't met. So I'll know my name is Nathan. Say, you must be Nathan, which and this is how much I was overthinking the whole thing. And it worked. I remember going into that classroom. Oh, you must be Nathan. Yes. And it sort of avoided that whole thing. But just those little things to be thinking, looking back on it now, it's just you overthinking it so massively to avoid that single moment where you say your name just in case I stutter on it, which I probably would have. Then people would have laughed and it would have rattled my confidence.
Yeah.
But looking back at it now, I just think that is ridiculous, just absurd. But it was the reality for me on a regular basis.
Wow. So in public school, we get to high school. What's going on? What high school was it again? Waverley?
Waverley College, yeah.
Waverley College. How was that?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah. I don't think I wasn't a smart kid, so whatever school I went to, I don't think it would have made that much difference for me as long as I had mates, which I did there. Had a lot of good mates. It was one of those schools you had to play sport on the weekend, so playing footy every weekend. So I'd be playing union on a Saturday, league on a Sunday. As I said, wasn't good at either, but loved it. Just loved being around mates on weekends and whatnot. Cricket in the summer, footy in the winter. Yeah, it was all as I said, I wasn't a smart kid by any means. I had no idea what I wanted to do after school. I had no idea what I wanted to do 5 years after school, realistically. But yeah, high school experience was all good. No real struggles. I had this speech thing that was going on, but it's funny, it was actually my introduction to learning how to laugh at yourself. So my last name, Durkin, my nickname through high school was Dirks, which by the end of year 12, it actually turned into the Dirks off the back of this stutter.
Yeah.
Which, I've told people before, I'm like, oh, you poor thing. In high school, that would have been brutal. But it was sort of I learned to actually be able to laugh at myself and not take myself too seriously. And it's actually a skill set that's come massively in handy. The more I've gone into life, the more I've gone into social media in particular.
Yeah.
As well. So to some extent, I'm actually kind of glad I went through that because it did teach me certain little things that'll probably sound just absolutely ridiculous to other people, but it did teach me things that I've been able to use later in my life now.
Yeah. And when we were in high school, okay, any side hustles going on, jobs, nothing?
Oh, I had little jobs here and there, like a paper run, or I'd worked at a chicken shop for a few months or something, but honestly just...
What chicken shop was that?
One in Hillsdale.
Sort of
in South Sydney. Yeah. So honestly, mate, it was just get enough money to be able to go out that weekend and go to the movies or do whatever was happening. But no, as far as side hustles, all that sort of stuff, never interest me in the slightest. Never. I know you spoke to a mate of mine, Matty Georges, the other day, and he tells me him as a 13-year-old, and I just think I couldn't think of anything worse than that.
I think it's in the WOG blood. There's just things going on from the age of 6 years old.
No WOG blood over here. There was nothing doing. Absolutely nothing. It was get through school, hang out with my mates, play sport on the weekend, show up for my 1 or 2 shifts a week.
What position in high school? What were you playing?
Mate, I was sort of in union, I was like a number 8. I was reasonably handy with my hands, so I used to sort of try and play a bit of 5'8" here and there, but I was always just too big and slow, realistically. So I'd always done the forward pack. League, I was sort of a hooker or lock, and I always much preferred league, but we sort of had to play union at school, which I don't have anything against union. I just prefer league.
Well, they in the Waverley, you have to.
It's union. Yeah, they're a union school. Yeah. So if it wasn't for me going to that school, I never would have played a game of union.
Yeah,
but it was good to experience it. It's a very different world to league, as we all know. But yeah, you'd go from playing league on a Sunday where it was a bit rougher and very different people to then union on a Sunday and our school, Waverley, we're in the CAS competition.
Yeah.
But we were with schools like Cranbrook and Knox, and they're all much more fancier than us. Waverley's obviously a private school, but compared to these other schools, we were just the absolute shit kickers, you'd show up there and everyone would be in collars and sweaters and just very, very different to everything I was used to. I used to get a bus from Mascot with, my 10 or 20 mates that came from Mascot and went all the way to Waverley to go to school. And we were sort of, there weren't many kids from Mascot that went to Waverley. So we had a very select few of us on this bus, and it's probably 20 of us. And like, I've obviously ended up like in the rugby league sphere. And another 4 or 5 of them have played first grade or ended up playing professional rugby union or something. So it is cool to look back on that group we're really tight with that have all gone on to do some pretty cool things realistically. Yeah.
Yeah. And back in school, what subjects were you doing out in high school?
Mate, the pretty stock standards, the maths, religions, English. Modern history I really liked.
Okay.
I wasn't that great at it, but I was better at it than other things. So that probably kept me at school. I like my sort of, like German sort of documentaries and all that sort of stuff. So I always had a bit of an interest in that. But honestly, mate, I was like high school. I show up, tick the boxes, get your name ticked off, do what you have to do, keep everyone happy. And I was just getting through school just for the weekends to hang out with my mates and all that sort of stuff. I never took it as seriously as I probably should have. But I think I also knew that, like, even if I took it super seriously, I wasn't book smart like that. I couldn't have realistically done 1,000 times better than what I actually did. So I sort of just enjoyed myself a little bit. Didn't really know what I wanted to do after school, but I just thought it'll work itself out.
There you go. And during high school, there was nothing that kind of you thought maybe I'll do that or maybe I'll do that. There was nothing.
Mate, I guess jumping ahead a little bit, like I ended up doing primary school teaching. So okay. I had a lot of like.
So we high school. You come at year 12.
Yep.
What's going on? Come out of school.
Come out
to the world. No more Waverley. What's going on?
I decided I was going to go into teaching and give that a go. Didn't really know too much about it, but I had a lot of. So like I'm in my generation, I'm the oldest cousin by about 10 years. So I always spent a lot of time with my like 10 younger cousins and stuff and enjoyed that. So I thought, okay, maybe teaching. And to be completely honest with you, the marks that I got only limited me to a certain amount of things anyway. So I ended up sort of going into teaching. So I went and got a job at a school in Coogee at a before and after school care.
What age was that? Was that 18, 19?
Yeah, 18, 19. I would have walked in there. Yeah. And it's probably, I ended up staying there for 6 years. It's probably the best 6 years of my life.
Why is that?
I got married last year. I met 2 of my best men at that job. And it was show up at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., work there for 3 hours, and you get a 3-hour break smack in the middle of the day. We were at Coogee, which was, the school route was 300 meters from the beach. And Coogee was, it obviously still is a very popular place now, but even then it probably wasn't, back then it probably wasn't as popular, so it wasn't as crowded all the time. So we sort of, it was just a great spot to spend your teenage years. And then we'd come back at 3 p.m. The kids had finished school. We'd have them until 5 or 6 p.m. So we'd end up working, a 6-hour day every day, but 3 hours in the middle of that, we'd be at the beach or we'd be at the gym or we'd be at the pub. Like it was just fantastic. And, if we had uni on, I could usually schedule everything to happen within those 3 hours. So there's not many people that are able to work 5 days a week, make decent money at that age and go to uni at the same time. But it was a very unique situation for me. And I did find there that I absolutely loved working with kids and help. Like I ended up working with a lot of kids with disabilities and stuff during that period. I did find a real passion for it. And it's teaching's very different to like before and after school care. Like you don't have to follow a curriculum and teach them, like get them to get their books out and actually teach them stuff. You sort of get to do things via fun. And I did love that. Love that aspect of it. But it did sort of make me realize, okay, I'm probably on the right path with teaching. But very similar to school. At uni, I just hated it. I just couldn't stand showing up every day. I just despised it, to be completely honest with you.
What was it about uni that you despised? Was it just what you were learning? Was it culture? What was it?
And I don't like sitting in one spot. I don't like sitting at a desk. I don't like sitting reading books for hours on end. I didn't like going in there and sitting in tutorials. And part of it was I'd rather be at the beach with my mates. I'd rather be at the pub. I'd rather be doing anything else right now. I probably didn't quite fit in with the culture at uni too. And part of that was my fault. That I remember when I arrived there, because I had it so good at this before and after school care, I was working with my best mates. We had a great culture. I probably didn't lean into uni as much as other people. And to be honest with you, like when I arrived at uni, like I saw the way that other people were leaning in massively, and I thought, fucking weird. Like, don't you guys have anything outside of uni? But it was just because I was lucky enough to be in a situation where I did, yeah. And there is part of me that sort of regrets that I didn't lean into it, because I now look back on it and go, fuck, if I would have leaned into it, it actually would have been great. I can see the appeal of it 100%. But I also think that, and it sounds great when I say this, like, because I was doing primary school teaching, it was, of a cohort of 200 people, it'd be me and maybe 8 other blokes. So it'd be 190 chicks essentially. So it was a very different sort of culture. And I was always sort of, I'd finish work at 9 a.m. I'd rush into uni, then I'd be rushing back to work. And that's where I'd rather be anyway. But I was sort of just in and out of there, and I never really formed any great relationships. And I think looking back on it now, I think that all those people are also very dedicated to being teachers. And I think if you look at my journey, it's probably evident I wasn't, realistically. So very different on that angle as well. Yeah.
Tell us about working with kids with a disability.
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It's probably one of the most rewarding things you can do. It really is. It's actually funny. Like I had one kid who arrived at our school. He was at the after school care, and that was the other thing. I was working at the after school care, and then this one kid arrived, and I had a really good bond with him. And he was a really troublesome kid, but a beautiful kid at the same time. And then what they actually ended up doing was, because he was so comfortable with me before and after school care, the school that was in the middle block of the day actually said to me, "Oh, can we give you a job to come and work in the middle hours as well?" So days that I didn't have uni, eventually I was starting at 6 a.m, working 6 a.m. till 9. Then I was working from 9 until 3 at the school. Then I was working at 3 until 6, which to me, I look back at it now and go, it's a 12-hour day. What were you thinking? But when you're 21, 22, like you've just got all the energy in the world and it doesn't phase you. So that was the other really good thing for me at that age. Like I was making a lot of money because I was working big hours, doing things that I loved realistically. And actually funny, the other day, that kid's now in year 11 or 12, and he actually went back to that school to do like a work experience thing. And someone sent me a photo of him at that school. And like this kid, like he had a lot of issues when he was younger. And like, I remember when he was 5, I used to be able to like hold him like that. Like he was about that big in total. And now he's like 6'7", about 105 kegs. Look like he could beat the shit out of me now. And it's so funny watching that whole transition of his life. And they actually showed him a photo of me from back then. Had no recollection of who I was. But for every day for like 6 years, I was like almost his safety blanket. And it's just funny, like I look back and I think, geez, I was his whole world for that period of time. But then time just goes on. These kids move on to the next people that are important in their lives. It's bizarre to me to look back at it like that, but I know how important I was to that kid's family during that period where it was tough for them. And for that 12 hours a day, I was there for that kid and numerous other kids too, obviously, but there's always just that one that stands out for me that if I, he was the kid that probably made me think, teaching might be the place for me.
It's a really, really difficult job to work with kids in disability. It's going to be a lot of mixed emotions. You could be a mind strong person, but I guess you'd need counseling yourself, like things that happen on a daily basis. Tell us more about the journey with all that. I mean, it's going to be a lot of emotion, but tell us about it.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I'm probably not the best person to talk to about it because, once again, I was 21, 22. I had the ability to, at 6 p.m. when the day ended, just completely switch off and go to the pub. And just, like, I think I was just young and naive, and it was probably for the best. But I do look at, like, My younger brother, funnily enough, is actually working at the exact same school, doing the exact same thing 10 years after me, doing the before and after school care. They found him very helpful for certain kids. And like some of the issues that he's dealing with kids are a lot more heavier than what I dealt with. I think it's, yeah, like a lot of these, you know, mental health problems we're seeing in adults nowadays. Like, I don't think people realize how common it's becoming in kids, how extreme it is as well. So, like, it's funny that you asked me that question because I look back at my time and go, oh, it didn't really impact me that much. But I listen to him talk about the kids at his school and I go, Christ, that would have impacted me. Like that would have got to me. And I find it interesting how, and I'm not there to see it, but how they sort of deal with that now.
Yeah, yeah. Like, you know, there's a gazillion jobs out there, but to gravitate towards a job like that, it's got to be. And I don't want to put words into your mouth, but it's got to be more than money. I mean, it's
got nothing to do with money.
Did you feel a duty of care? Did you feel like?
Yeah, for sure. If it was about money, I'm a moron. It's the dumbest place in the world to go if you want money, realistically, because there isn't much money in it. It was that feeling of you doing the right thing, and it's also that feeling of some people have the ability to be able to deal with kids and be able to deal with kids that have disabilities and problems, and I was lucky enough to have the ability to be able to do that. And I guess it was sort of like, maybe this is my thing, maybe this is my niche, and I sort of, you know, I look back at it now and I think there's no way I could have done it for 30 or 40 years. There's, you know, certain people in schools and whatnot that can, and full credit to them. And at that time, I probably thought I could, but I don't think I actually could have. Because it is, eventually, I think it does get draining. And then, without jumping ahead, but then I went into teaching and sort of saw the other side of it, and it just wasn't what I was expecting at all.
Yeah. And, you know, on that topic, I heard somewhere the statistics of kids with a disability the last 30 years is kind of on a incline. What's with that?
Look, you're 100% correct. And I've sort of got my own opinions about this. Like I like, and this was part of my problem when I became a teacher. Like, you know, a kid misbehaves and I've got all these teachers around me that want to put him on a spectrum somewhere and want to, you know, diagnose him with something. And I'm like, and maybe I'm wrong on it, but I do think there is a little bit of over-diagnosis in schools now, in my opinion. And I think that we're trying to constantly pigeonhole everyone into something. And, you know, like I remember sitting there with like doing like courses to learn about autism and the spectrum and everything. And I remember sitting there reading this stuff about what boxes to tick and things to look out for. And I remember sitting there going, I'm one of these people.
Yeah.
I'm 100% one of these people, but we'll get to it soon. Mine comes across in, I have this incredible recall of rugby league stuff that everyone thinks cool. So it's not a problem, but then you get it in other kids about, you know, different things that they're really intrigued with, and it sort of gets diagnosed as a problem to some extent. It's, it was one thing that really drove me away from teaching, the overdiagnosis and all that sort of stuff. But once again, I'm not experienced enough and educated enough to probably comment on it properly. It's just what I observed in my few years of teaching.
Yeah, it's very, very, very difficult topic, and you know, you play it down, but you know, when I see an ambulance driver, when I see the individuals that work with kids with disability, people that work in nursing homes, heroes.
Yeah, and it's funny, mate. Like I look at my friends that are nurses, and I did the exact same thing. I go, mate, you're a hero. How on earth do you possibly deal with that? But for whatever reason, I don't look at teaching the same way. And maybe that's just being modest or whatever. I don't know. But I always just look at nursing and think, geez, that must be a million times harder.
Yeah. Gosh.
Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I just, you know, every time I'm in a hospital, it scares the living shit out of me, to be honest. I hate being in them. And I guess some people would be like that in schools with young kids, but I guess I'm just comfortable in there, or was previously.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there you go. So now you 6 years at that job from 18 to 16. So you're about 24 years old. Um, uh, you're teaching. Then what? What's happening 24, 25?
Yeah, I would have graduated from uni when I was 24, 25.
Okay.
I spent a little bit longer in uni. Like I think it was a 4-year degree.
Big degree, 4 years.
What's that?
It's long.
Yeah, it was longer if you did it my way. I think I was there for about 5 or 6 because I just, you'd have the people from uni that show up and they do, 4 subjects a year. And I'd be like, I've got a job that I love. I'd rather be there. So I might do 2 subjects a year. And honestly, like if I signed up for a subject and I saw the available times and it meant that I couldn't work 2 days, I'd go, no, I'll just do it next year. I'm in no rush to get out of where I am. Like I was working, as I said, I was working before and after school care and the middle section. Like I was probably getting paid more than most teachers anyway. So I was like, I'm in no rush to get out of here. I'm with my mates. I'm enjoying it. I've got, I take care of this kid most of the time, who to everyone else, he's a nightmare. To me, I'm fine with him. It's sweet. Like it wasn't stressing me out. I was completely okay with it. So I was sort of like, I'm okay to take my time in uni. I think it shit my parents to no end, but it didn't really faze me. So I eventually finished. And then I'd done like a few, when you're doing teaching at the uni I was at, you had to go and do like 10 weeks of prac on 3 separate occasions. And I went to some very interesting schools, like schools that English as a second language and whatnot. That sort of opened my eyes up. So like just a part of Sydney that I hadn't really experienced, to be completely honest with you, which was great. And then I graduated. I actually ended up, funnily enough, my first teaching job was back at the primary school I actually went to. So I walked back in there. I was only there for a year or so, and then I moved to a school in Malabar over in South Sydney that I felt a lot more comfortable in. Really interesting school. It was like split down the middle. The kids would either come from those beautiful houses on the Malabar headland, or they'd come from the housing.
Where's Malabar near again?
Like the jail, Long Bay Jail.
Okay.
To our school, as I said, there was $5 million houses to the left, Long Bay Jail to the right, and the housing commissions. You'd have these kids, half of them would come from Long Bay Jail and that sort of area, the housing commission, then half of them would come from these multi-million-dollar houses. So it was a really interesting mix of kids.
Yeah.
Which had its challenges, but like it just taught me a lot about life in that period. Like I'd have kids that I'd pack their lunch every day and bring it to school because I knew they weren't going to get lunch from home, sort of thing. But then you'd have other kids that would, get dropped off in a $100,000 car that morning.
Yeah.
Like just the range was just incredible.
And I want to hear it from yourself, but I've heard of studies that have done on cruise ships, and a cruise ship, there's 500 people, 1,000 people on a cruise ship, and they always find that people end up going into their groups. The mums that love the handbags, they would always find each other in something, and then the groups, individuals, it's like tribes. It's like we go back thousands of years where people stick with the thing. How was the dynamic with that? Would it, as young kids, do they just man?
I think it's different with kids.
Kids is whatever goes.
Yeah,
and that's beautiful.
It is beautiful, man. It's fantastic. It really is. Yeah.
It's innocence.
I've never even thought about it like that because it just wasn't like that at that school. You would have kids that would come from housing commissions that would be best mates with kids that are driving Mercs to school and whatnot. Like it was a very unique situation. We had
something must happen with age when you get older, and
100% life beats you down to a pulp and you fall into all the other shit.
You could just have that innocence as a kid.
Yeah, and it was that school as well was about 25% Indigenous children. So getting to know that culture, I absolutely loved that. It was fantastic. And a lot of those kids, the boys in particular, they all loved their rugby league, and that was sort of my in with them and whatnot. So, and that was the other thing with teaching with me that was challenging, is because I was a male and I got used to dealing with kids that had disabilities or just were troublesome kids or from tough backgrounds. I'd normally sort of get shortballed these really tough classes. which I enjoyed the challenge, and most like I could handle all of them. It was all okay, and it was all sweet, but it was very tiring dealing with those sort of kids day in, day out. Yeah, rewarding but exhausting at the same time.
I'm sure you'd have a gazillion stories of you're dealing the challenges that you've just. I don't know. You probably see someone hitting another person, and how do you deal with that when that person doesn't really know what they're doing, but there's somebody else. So many situations you must get. Okay, how do I handle this one? Like,
yeah, and that's not a like that. That realistically happens 8 times a day to a teacher, and it's those little things that unless you've been a teacher, you probably don't think about all those things all the time. But you would also, you would have these kids that would get into arguments that like they live in the same suburb, but they come from different worlds. Realistically, there was one kid, who would get picked up, would go to their dance class that would cost a fortune, that would then go home and have dinner ready on the table, whereas the other kid would walk out the school gates, look around, no parents there. Okay, I must be walking home today. Walk home, walk in the door, no parents home. Parents might not come home that night. What am I going to do for dinner? Have to find something in the cupboard. And they were divided by no more than 2 kilometers where they would have lived, and just completely different worlds.
Wow. There you go. Very interesting. So, and you're still about 27. You're making a bit of money through working all those hours. What are you doing with it? You saving?
Great
you're
question.
Spending? What are you doing?
No, I'm not saving. I don't know what I'm doing with it. Just on the weekends doing whatever, just being young and stupid.
It goes, doesn't it? Doesn't money come and go? Like,
yeah. Once again, I can't tell you where it went, but it went. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always just been a very relaxed kind of guy that wasn't stressing about the future or overthinking it too much. I had from 21 to about 24, had a girlfriend during that period. We broke up. And then when I was about 26, 27, actually probably a bit younger, 25 or so, I met the girl who's my wife now. So we've been together we met in 2017, so 7 years or something like that. So,
wow.
So yeah, when I met her, I was a teacher still. And it was sort of during this period when I was at Malabar, I just made this Instagram page about rugby league and
why'd you do that?
Fantasy sports. Honestly, do you play any fantasy sports at all, like NFL fantasy or any of that sort of stuff?
I used to. I used to. So
okay.
I used to. Yeah.
So I've got my main. Well, one of my main groups of mates. There's like 14 of us. We all play in a NRL fantasy comp, and we all have the weekend where we all go down to the South Coast. We all get together. We all sit in a room like this, all of our laptops. We pick our teams, and that's our team for the year of all the players and everything. And I got really into it. I loved it. Then they did a NFL fantasy one year, and I thought, I'll give that a crack. At that point, I didn't. I know my Pittsburgh Steelers well, but outside of that, there's 31 other teams I had no idea about.
Isn't it?
It's enormous, mate.
Oh my god,
that's
enormous. A full-time job for God's sake.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I joined this comp, and I'm very competitive. So I was like, I want to win this. So I remember jumping on Twitter, and I found like a guy called the Fantasy Guru, and I just followed his tips all year. I didn't win the thing. I came like second or third, but I expected to come last. I was I didn't know anything. And I thought, as I was playing, I was like, geez, I wonder if I could do this for NRL, for Supercoach, NRL Fantasy. And I thought, I'll give it a go. We'll see what happens. So I started the page,
what year is this again?
This was 2018. Yeah. So this was during the NRL season, the NFL season. So it would have been October. It would have been around about this time of the year. And the NFL season was in full swing, and I thought, okay, NRL season's not too far away. And mate, to be honest with you, my entire plan was I'll make this page, and I literally copy and pasted from this dude. I was Supercoach Guru, because that was the fantasy that we played. And my kind of plan.
What was he called?
What's that?
What was he called?
He was called like NFL Fantasy Guru.
Okay, shout out to NFL Fantasy Guru. Okay?
Yeah, shout out to him. I don't know what he's up to. He would have been handy this year, though. I made my return to NFL Fantasy.
Oh,
Yeah, and I
God,
started
we'll tag
it.
him. We'll put him up the screen. We'll tag him. There you go.
And I started it, mate. And I honestly, like, my entire plan was I know that in March is when me and my mates all get together. We go down the South Coast and we all pick our teams. And I thought it'd be funny if I could get this page up and running, get a bit of a following, not tell any of them.
Yeah.
And see who I could trap into asking me questions and stuff.
Yeah.
Which it actually ended up happening. A few of the boys started messaging me, what are your thoughts on this guy, them not knowing it's me. And I was like, okay, when we get to the weekend, I'll expose them all. We'll all have a laugh. Anyway, I like a night or two before I was going to do it, I got drunk and someone worked it out. And so it all fell over. But by that point, like I got to that weekend and I was sort of like, oh, okay, like.
So you're giving him phony tips to then win the comp.
Well, kind of, yeah. But I was also saying, I'm like, oh, how have you gone in your comp? Hoping they'd lie to me and go, oh, I've won a few comps and blah, blah, blah. But unfortunately, all my mates are pretty good fellas. So no one did lie. So that was very disappointing. But I got to that night and I was like, okay, like I did this whole thing to try and G my mates up. I've got 3,000 followers.
How'd you get 3,000 followers?
Mate, just because I think I was like kind of one of the first ones in the space doing that sort of thing.
What would you do? Like, would you just post like graphics or photos? You talk on
just
camera?
Graphics. No, graphics. Mate, I'll talk about it soon, but I didn't show my face on the page for the first 2 years.
You know what? We're just going to go scroll back from day dot. You haven't deleted things.
What's that?
You haven't deleted anything?
No.
All right, let's bring it back. The OG, so you're a teacher at this time.
The scroll will take you like maybe 24 hours. Like there's that much content
outsource
on there.
this one.
Outsource it. I would definitely outsource
Someone from the Philippines is going to be on your page all night, right?
Mate, like just having a look at it now, like that, like you would have to scroll back.
How many posts?
9,000 posts.
9,000 posts.
Yeah. All rugby league stuff.
All right, so this is let's stay on this. It's 218. 218
it is,
Who's doing well in the NRL back then?
That's the Roosters are about to go back to back. So the Melbourne Storm have just won the comp. No. Cooper Cronk's just arrived.
Cooper Cronk's just arrived. What a game. What a grand final that was.
Incredible. Yeah. So it was just after that grand final. And started this page and I got to the weekend and I was like, okay, cat's out of the bag. My mates know it's me. What am I going to do with this now? And mate, I'm very, very lucky. One of my best mates that I went to high school with, he was like an incredible footballer. He was, outside centre for the New South Wales rugby union team when we were in Year 12. He was the opening bowler for cricket. He was in the Australian athletics for javelin, an incredible sportsman. And then we finished high school and he sort of floated out of school, sort of lost a bit of interest. We sort of lost touch a little bit. He was sort of just floating through life. And suddenly we noticed he started this Instagram page where he was just sharing like interior design pictures.
Yeah.
And like me, I'm like just an Aussie bloke who plays footy. And so was this guy. So for me, that was a bit, what the fuck's going on here? This is a bit odd. This is a bit outside of the square. Well, that's a bit strange. Anyway, he's now turned that into, I won't say the name of the place because he's a very humble guy, but it's an Instagram page with about, I think, 3 million followers now.
Wow. It's
like a worldwide big business now that he's sort of started from sharing pictures of chairs and stuff. And I remember I said to him, because he was already doing pretty well in the space by then, social media and everything. I showed it to him and he's like, oh, keep going at this. And I'm like, what do you mean keep going at it? He's like, just keep going at it. Like, this will be your full-time job soon. And I sort of went, you're crazy. How on earth could I, that has never played a game of first grade football, make a career out of talking about footy? And he's like, trust me, mate, social media, just keep at it. You'll be doing this full-time within 2 or 3 years. And I was doing it full-time within 2 years. Crazy.
So, but you're a teacher.
Yep.
It's 218. You got 3,000 followers. Then what? Like, at what point did you look at it and go, "Oh, I think I'm onto something"?
Not for a while, to be honest with you. My mate said that to me, and I sort of went, "Yeah, okay, whatever." Like, I don't think you realise how small rugby league is in the world space, like, and how small fantasy sports is. I now look back at that thought process and go, "You idiot." That's just such a dumb thought process to run with. But mate, I worked 2018, 2019. It was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. I think I had one of the worst bosses I've ever come across at that school, and I just couldn't stand her. So I left, went to another school. I arrived there and I sort of thought, by this point I probably had 25,000 followers. So it had grown pretty quickly.
And just with that,
Yeah.
you haven't started talking on camera yet.
No, I haven't shown myself yet. No.
And so, why are people following? Are you getting things right? Is it the graphics? Is it what were you doing?
Yeah, I was
that's
getting
not
things
normal.
right. Like I'm not from a Supercoach point of view. Like I'm good at what I do, and I've always been good at it, and I've known that. So I always backed myself in, and honestly, I don't think anyone has at that point had gone as hard at it as I did.
Okay.
At that point, so I think
like
it just
every game nonstop.
every game, mate, and it was every day.
Yeah.
For 365 days, I would have multiple posts a day. And yeah, I just went really hard at it. It was all, like I would, as I said, at the school I was at, I didn't like the principal. I didn't get along with a lot of people there. So I'd show up at school. I'd, say hi to people in the morning. I'd go to my room and I'd get my stuff done. Then I'd be prepared for the day. But then I'd spend the next hour where I would just be making posts on my phone.
Yeah.
Recess lunch, I'd stay in my room.
And what kind of posts? Like news, like this person
could be news updates, could be predictions for the weekend.
Yeah.
Could be, score predictions, which players to buy or sell because it's fantasy sports and whatnot. All that sort of stuff that I was just like the word hustle, I guess. I was spending my lunches and recesses and after school just doing it all the time. And it probably ostracized me a little bit within that school community because I wasn't going into the staff room at recess and lunch, which is a bit of a no-no in schools because you've got to be around everyone. It's a community and all that. But I didn't enjoy that community. And I thought, and I was starting to see there might be an avenue here for something. And I started to get the occasional sponsor on.
So you 25,000, like who would sponsor you?
So my first sponsor was a thing called Moneyball. Actually don't exist anymore. It was a really good idea though. They were a gambling agency.
Okay.
Where you could actually bet on the fantasy scores of players every weekend. So they were trying to get off the ground. So they were, they'd give me a sign up fee for everyone. I got to sign up and I got them like 2,000 or 3,000 people to sign up to it.
Well, that's big.
Yeah, mate, it was, well,
that's great.
At the time, stupid me, I thought I've got 25,000. I only got 3,000 to sign up. That's not that great. But now with the knowledge I have of how all of it works, it was actually sensational to get them 3,000 people to sign up. And I got, X amount for each sign up. But it was funny, like even when I was teaching, like none of the teachers knew I had this thing. They had no idea. So they just all thought I was just being an asshole, just sitting in my classroom all the time, not talking to them.
Yeah.
Little did they know I was working on this thing the entire time. And it's also like, that's the other thing I had to keep in mind is that when I was teaching, I was also making money from a gambling agency on the side.
So, and
which probably wasn't above board. But no one knew. No one had any idea.
Was it kind of per sign up? You'd get little payouts or little kickbacks?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think it was per sign up. And it wasn't much, mate. Like I look back at it and go, that's such a stupid deal to agree to. But I had no idea coming to this space. So it was like $20 a sign up or something. But when I got 3,000 people, it was like really good money.
Yeah. By
the end of it. And I was sort of like, oh, okay. Maybe there's something here. Maybe. I went to the next school I was at. I arrived at that school. And that's when it all sort of changed for me that I got an opportunity to go on Bloke in a Bar.
Okay.
So
you just got a DM?
Do you know the Bloke brand?
Of course, yes.
Yeah, okay.
You can't not. You can't not.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And getting into it, I'm a mad Doggies fan. We're going to win the premiership in 225.
Yeah.
Put your house in it. But he's good, isn't he?
He's a genius, mate. He's an absolute genius. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me. He's changed my life. But it was also, Denim was looking for a co-host. And like, it's rugby league. Like there's a million guys that have played first grade and done it. But he'd just seen what I was doing on social media and how hard I worked at it. And that my takes were getting pretty accurate as time went on and things were aging really well. So he gave me an opportunity to come on, which was crazy for me because once again, as I said, like, I was working in a school and I had a gambling agency on the side that no one knew about. That was a bit, how you going? Yeah. Then all of a sudden I'm on the biggest sports podcast in the country that's literally named after a beer, swearing every Monday and carrying on like a tit and then showing up to school again on Tuesday. So it was all, and the school I was at, thankfully, they were really good about it, but it was also like schools are, as they should be, schools are very weird with social media and their teachers, like kids being able to find teachers on social media. So like we've all got all teachers have all their stuff on private, I'm on one of the biggest sporting pages 3 days a week now on social media. So the kids sort of started to work out what was going on, and then it was started, okay, Mr. Durkin's, advertising beer on a Monday. Mr. Durkin's on a show sponsored by Sportsbet on a Monday. Like all this sort of stuff that was starting to happen. And like, because it's like the whole show is, it's built around mates sitting around having beers talking about footy. There was the occasional swear word here and there, which is, again, a big no-no. So it's sort of, I don't know, it was sort of coming to a point where I was like, okay, I've either got to just make the jump here and go all in on this thing, or I'm probably destined to get in trouble from a school at some point. And rightly so, to be honest with you. Like if a school came and said, hey, it's not a great look that you're pushing alcohol, gambling, that sort of stuff, like it's probably not sweet. I'd go, yeah, that's completely fair. So I did the right thing by them. I laid it out to the principal, who I really liked at this new school. I said, I love the place. It's good fun, but like, I just don't know how long this can work for. And at some point, I'm hoping it'll get to a point where I can leave. So I'm thinking I'm just going to take the parachute off and just jump now and see what happens. And yeah, it turned out to be the best decision I've ever made, just about.
So when you took the leap of faith, how old were you?
It would have been, so sort of during COVID. It's weird. Like I look back now, and COVID from a business point of view was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The whole world stopped and everyone needed something to listen to. Rugby league stopped. And all of a sudden I had this, 25,000 that in that COVID period grew to 40 and 50,000, because every day I just jumped behind the mic and talked about something random. I'd make up things. It got to the point where there was so much little to talk about. I was opening packs of footy cards and just talking about each player that came out, and people were listening to it every day. So I just started to grow this huge following by that. And then by the time we came out of COVID, I went, okay, I'm now on Bloke in a Bar. I've got 50,000 followers. I can work at school sort of part-time. I think before I jumped, I went to part-time and then I jumped. So it meant that I could keep my Mondays free. I could go and do Bloke. I could go in there and I could work casual days, which is when they sort of call you and say, we need you for this day. And you get paid pretty well for those casual days. So I was probably doing casual teaching 2 days a week, which is, like, with all due respect to casual teachers out there, it's, hey, can you come and babysit this class for today? Which for some people can be really challenging. For me, I was very confident in what I did. And as a male, it's probably a little bit easier as well at times. So it was great for me. I could just go in, work 2 days. Those 2 days I'd make enough money to, put food on the table, pay rent, all that sort of stuff. My missus was very supportive of me through all this. She just said, go for it. And then, within a year or so, a lot more deals and sponsorships started to roll in. Viewership just went up. Listens just went up. Podcasting's really taken a big jump in the last 4 or 5 years.
But during that time too, I mean, you've gone from, teacher to very normal job like everybody else.
Yep.
You're not walking down the street and people are going, I know you.
Not at that point. Very rarely.
The views, I mean, you're getting 50,000 views, 100,000
views. Yeah,
it
was happening occasionally, but not as much as you'd expect. Like it's very different now. Now that I've gone all in on it and everything, not when I'm walking down the street. But like if I'm at a rugby league game, like obviously a lot of people, listen to the podcast or follow the Instagram page or just see my head popping up around somewhere. Back then, it wasn't quite like that. To be honest with you, it was very. If I was at a rugby league game for a couple of hours, like I might get 5 or 6 people that might come up and say hello to me. And like, I still remember the first time that happened, just thinking, oh my God, this is insane that this is happening now.
How'd that feel? Because
it's a weird feeling. And it's not like it's great and everything's good, but it's also my worst nightmare. Like knowing that, you're walking down the street and someone knows who you are and is watching you and whatnot. Like, I've got used to it now and I've learned to just really appreciate how lucky I am to have it. But when it first was happening, it was actually quite, I don't know what the word is. It was just quite unnerving at the start that you could be, and like I'd be at a pub and a guy just come up to my table and give me a schooner and go, oh, thanks for the podcast, mate. I really enjoy it. And like, that stuff's sort of great, but then you're looking around the room going, oh, like who else is like watching me or like keeping an eye on me sort of thing. It was just a weird thing because it sort of didn't happen overnight for me, but it kind of did.
Yeah. So and
in a rugby league sphere.
just again, what age again? You were 29 when you took the.
Yeah, 28, 29 around that. It all sort of blurs into one for me once you throw COVID in there as well. Yeah, I think I was about blur, 28, 29. Yeah. And for me,
where were you living then?
I was in Mascot, so we were lucky enough. We were living, my wife, the house she grew up in, her old man built like a granny flat out the back.
Yeah.
So we were living in the granny flat and they had a spare bedroom in the house. So during COVID, he said to me, I asked him, I said, mate, that spare bedroom, do you mind if I turn it into a studio? And like, I look at the studio you've started with here compared to what I had. Like, I just had a normal room. I had literally like, you know, when you move house and you're in an elevator and they put those rugs up in the elevator, that's what I had up around the walls, soundproofing. I didn't have any cameras or anything. I just had a mic, roadcaster, and my laptop. And I went from there and built, you know, a business that I could go full time in within 2 years.
You got any photos of that? We'll pop that up.
Mate, I could probably find you one. I wish I would have documented more of it back then.
Yeah.
Because it's like the other thing for me was I'm living in Mascot. I'm next to the airport. I remember recording every time a plane would take off, I'd have to pause it because the soundproofing wasn't good enough to overcome the planes that were coming over. And mate, like a lot of my podcasting, which has probably been what's been so unique about mine and what I think's made it so successful. 99% of my podcasts are me on my own, just talking about whatever's going on in footy. Like I would never really interview people. I would just talk. So I'd say, okay, this is what happens today. This is my thoughts on it, blah, blah, blah. Very unique. And if it takes 5 minutes, sweet, I upload a 5-minute podcast for like a bite size sort of thing.
So you upload a podcast onto like a Spotify, or was it also going onto Instagram? Like
I would upload it straight to Spotify. So by this time as well, I'd signed a deal with Acast. So I work with them. They do all my podcast deals and everything. So I upload everything onto Acast.
Taking notes, Teo. Taking notes.
Oh yeah, good people. So yeah, Acast. I'd upload it to that website, which means it would automatically go out to Spotify and Apple.
Yeah.
And then I would cut up my own content from that, similar to what you guys do here. I was just doing it all myself. But it was at a point like at the start where I would just set up my phone in front of me. I'd record myself doing the podcast and I'd go through and just cut up a minute or two and then I'd upload that. But yeah, a lot of my stuff was just static pics, quotes and stuff. And I got to the point, which I think is another thing I did that I felt very uncomfortable with at the start, but I think it was a real game changer for me. I would just make quotes of myself. And I would just, whatever I spoke about, I'd make 3 quotes of things I said, which sounds incredibly arrogant. And it was embarrassing at times, but it was my way to get my stuff out there. And it worked. It was, you know, my quotes and everything would get people interested. They'd come and listen to the podcast. And, you know, normally when someone's quoted, like it's someone else quoting them.
Yeah.
But I would just write Rugby League Guru via Rugby League Guru podcast. Just put it out there. And yeah, I look at that and it was a weird thing to do at the time, but I think you've got to promote what you're doing. You've got to push it. And
100%.
That was the way I went about it and it worked for me. As uncomfortable as it was.
So and the full-time gig you're generating that money to cover your sponsorships.
Even then though, like I remember I had a sponsorship deal. I won't say the company, but I had a sponsorship deal that had come in that was sort of I saw the money it was going to give me and I thought, okay, this sort of money, I can leave my job. I can go all in for 3 or 4 months and survive off this. And if I realize after 3 or 4 months, oh no, I'm actually not ready for this, I can just go back to teaching. Told the principal I was leaving, all good. 2 weeks later, that deal falls through. I've just sort of gone, shit. Took my parachute off and now I'm in free fall. But I look back at it now, and at the time, mate, like I burst into tears. I was devastated. It absolutely crushed me. But it made me work my ass off for that next 3 or 4 months, and it made the world of difference. Like it's one of those things I look back on. It was terrible at the time, but it was actually one of the best things that ever happened to me. Because it just made me look at it all and go, okay, how am I going to make this work? Whereas I think if I would have got that first deal, I might have sort of relaxed a little bit, just sort of gone with the flow, but it sort of forced me. Because like, as well, like I've got at that time, a girlfriend that's backed me to do all these things, and I've gone, oh, I've got this deal. That means I can go out. Okay, sweet, go. And then it's not there. Like I had no money coming in whatsoever.
A duty of care.
Yeah, 100%. And it's and it just pushed me to work extra hard at it, and pushed me to a new level. At that point as well, Bloke in a Bar was just getting bigger and bigger. As I said, Kempy's just a genius at what he does, and just sort of dragged me along for the ride. And like I know that I added a lot to the show as well, and still do today, but having him in my corner gave me a lot of confidence as well. And it's sort of, yeah, like rugby league. Sounds silly, but rugby league's a lot like high school. If you're at high school and the cool kid's put his arm around you, it matters. It sort of, it gives you the tick of approval to everyone else. And because Kempy had his arm around me, that's what sort of just triggered me to a new level where, you know, I think when I was doing it on my own, I think players would sort of look at me and be like, what's this guy doing? Who is he? Blah, blah, blah. But because I had Kempy with me that backed me, I think players sort of looked at Kempy and went, okay, well, he's a player. He sort of gives this guy the tick of approval, so he must be all right, kind of thing. And it helped me massively, and still does to this day. I'm like forever grateful. I don't know if I'd be where I am without Kempy, realistically.
And how old are you right now?
32.
So that was from 29. So you've been full-time for about 3 years.
Yeah.
3-4 years.
Yeah, about 3 or 4 years. Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah.
What does the average day look like for you?
So depends on the day. Like on a Monday, our Bloke in a Bar podcast, people that don't listen to it, it's the longest podcast in human history. Like Joe Rogan can't hold a candle to us. We go for 4 hours every Monday. Like some of our episodes, we've had a 7-hour episode before, and it's just footy chat, nothing in between.
Wow.
Yeah, it is actually
7
insane.
hours.
Yeah, and like I've got used to it now. I've done it every Monday for 3 years. I've got used to it. But it's so funny when I talk to people that don't know rugby league, don't know what Bloke in a Bar is, I talk to them and like they almost fall over. Like, how do people have time to listen to it? And I'm like, well, people find time, or people pick out their team they want to listen to, or their topic they want to listen to, or whatever. And as far as I'm concerned, like we put out this 4 hours. You might not have time to listen to it all, but if you don't, it's fine. Whatever time you do have, hopefully you come to us to consume what we produce, and we just provide so many options for people. Like we had a Christmas party last Sunday, so we had to get up and record Monday morning, and like I was dusty as all hell. I think Kempy could sort of read the room a little bit. He's like, oh, we'll just do a shorter podcast today. Like we went for 2.5 hours. And I remember getting to the end of that 2.5 hours and go, oh, that was crazy. That was fine. Because we're just so used to doing these 4 and 5 hour podcasts every Monday. Which I think is, yeah, it's like anything when you're training or whatever, like your body gets used to these sort of things. And so like me and Kempy can sit next to each other for 4 hours and talk about footy once a week. And it's honestly like, it's not a stress for us at all. But then occasionally like we bring a guest in or something and they do the show with us. I remember I wasn't actually on the episode. He replaced me because I had something else to do. But like Mitch Pearce came on for an episode.
Oh yeah.
And I think it went for about 2 hours. And Mitch Pearce got the end of it, and he was like, "My God, I need a drink of water. I need to have a nap." Blah blah blah. But we're just so tailored to it now. It's it's a very unique thing what we've got at Bloke in a Bar. It's a very special sort of. Yeah, we've had like we do live shows sort of around the country and everything, and we have people come. You get a few hundred people that'll come to the live shows and just. We've done like country tours where we just pick a country town, we go there, we do a live show in a pub there, and people just come from all the towns around, and it's a very special community that Kempy's built. And I just love that it's called Bloke. It's just so perfect.
Yeah,
perfect for me as well. It's unreal.
Yeah, and it's kind of beyond NRL because you got the UFC. What do? I see Bloke in the Bars first. Bang! Yep. Who's won it? It pops up. Bang!
And that's where Kempy, like I sort of focus on rugby league, what I do, but Kempy's like he's moving into cricket, he's moving into UFC. I'm very, very lucky to have access to Kempy's mind and just how he thinks and how he approaches things and his work ethic and everything. Which like to be an athlete and make it in first grade, you have to have a particular sort of mindset. I think I look at a lot of NRL players and I talk to a lot of guys post-career that they just haven't been able to apply that same approach to life outside of footy. Whereas I'd argue like Kempy's almost better at applying it to life after footy than what he was playing footy. And like Kempy only played 40 odd games, but he was an incredible player. Like lightning quick. He hates talking about it, but like he was playing for the Broncos, and 3 months before that, he had contract offers from the Brisbane Lions and the Brisbane Roar. Ended up signing with the Broncos. He'd pretty much never played rugby league before, and 2 months later, he's playing in first grade. Like he's a very special human, Kempy.
There you go. So, yeah, I mean, in the off season, you still pumping?
Still keep moving.
Wow.
Of this year, taking a dive into Patreon.
Okay.
It's been a real game changer for me. So
Tell us about that.
It's good, mate. Build like a little small community. It's $8 a month for people to join, which I think the subscription method is just becoming more and more part of our lives between Netflix, Stan, all this sort of stuff. And I was a bit worried when I started, like, are people going to want to be a part of this? But people just love it. People just love the exclusive content, seeing the little behind the scenes, all that sort of stuff. And it also gives me another revenue stream, obviously, but more importantly, it gives me a revenue stream at quieter parts of the year. So for me, like, I haven't done it, but if I was to divide into a pie chart, percentage wise, I reckon I would make 90% of my money during the year between March and October. So like the pay that I make in March can honestly be 30 times what I make in January, and they're only 2 months apart. So January, Christmas time, like over the last couple of years before I had this Patreon and working out different ways to manage it, like it was a nightmare, absolute nightmare, because I've just had no money coming in. So I've had to work out ways to manage that period and whatnot, which has been really good. I love the Patreon group. It's like I've got about 500 people in there at the moment. During the season, it gets up to around about 1,000. I reckon we'll just go 1,000 plus or so next year, hopefully. And it's just the most diehard, dedicated fans imaginable that are like me. They're just footy nerds that just absolutely love it.
Did you watch every game?
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Women's games?
Mate, the women's games, I try and tune into them. I'm very big on, if you can't do something 100%, don't pretend like you are. Yeah. And I spend time on the women's game, but mate, at the end of the day, I'm watching 8 games of footy on the weekend. You do the maths there; they take about 3 hours each. The whole telecast. It's like 24 hours of rugby league. You chuck in 6 more women's games. All of a sudden, you're looking at a 40-hour weekend of rugby league alone,
and not enough time.
There's just not enough time. Like it's
what about reserve grade?
I keep up to date with it. I don't watch every single game all the way through, but I keep up to date with it. That's like a big thing for me. Like the kids coming through the grades is something that that's become like my catchphrase, I guess you could call it. Could be anything. So these young kids that are coming through the grades. So I do spend a lot of time on that. It's been good for me the last few years. My brother's actually in the Roosters junior system. So over the last few years, he's gone Harold Matts, SG Ball. So I've sort of been in and around that space the last few years, which has been really good timing. He's now under 20s for the Roosters, so I sort of keep track of that competition. But yeah, the women's game is something I would love to sink my fangs into properly and just do it as well as I do NRL, but time is just hard. Like there's the English Super League as well. I get a lot of English fans that message me and they blow up because I don't cover it, and I just say, guys, it would be disrespectful for me to not watch every single game and pretend like I do. It'd just be a cop-out. So the NRLW is something, as I expand my team, I really want to start to spend more time on it, because I'll be the first to say, like when the NRLW came in 10 years ago, whatever, like the product was dreadful. It was hard to watch. Now it is sensational. And you see people on social media still bagging and whatnot. They're people that'll bag it no matter what. The product is sensational at the moment for the NRLW. We've started to do more and more content around it, but I'd be lying if I said it was to the same depth as we do the NRL, simply because there's just not enough time in a day for me to do it properly. And I refuse to half-ass it and pretend like I'm doing it properly and then try and take credit for that.
Yeah. I mean, the perks of, getting a lot of views, you're attracting a lot of attention. What else comes with that? I mean, I'm guessing you get invited to lots of great events. Being a part. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's nice. It's cool. Like it's it's a bit of a. I'm very uncomfortable talking about it if I'm completely honest with you because it is a weird thing to talk about. But you do get these opportunities like Magic Round for me. You know, those that aren't NRL fans, every single game of that round is in Brisbane at Suncorp Stadium. So, you know, we put on a live show up there, and it's just there's 80,000 rugby league fans within 4 streets. Like it is just mayhem. And when we're there, like we can't walk from here to that wall away without someone saying hello or wanting a photo or something. And it's the most overwhelming thing of all time, but also I'm just so grateful to be in that position.
Yeah.
And so lucky to be in that position. And yeah, like I've managed to somehow weasel my way into some pretty cool things that have blown me away. Like I went to Las Vegas last year, obviously, when the NRL launched there. I'm going back there in a few months, but
not bad.
Not bad. It's all right.
Not bad.
But like so I work very closely with the Hello Sport podcast. I don't know if you know Tom and Eddie. You know, I do a betting show with them now once a week and everything. But we were in Vegas last year and we just pulled up at a random hotel, which we didn't know all the NRL players were staying there. We just pulled up at a random hotel. And,
where's this going? Where we went?
Well, yeah, you know, we're hungover as balls the whole week and whatever. We just go and grab dinner. It's just the 3 of us. And then this guy that we already knew from KO came up to us. He's like, "Oh, what are you guys doing here?" We're like, "Oh, we're just getting a feed and seeing where the nights take us. It's Vegas. Like, we'll see where we end up." And he's like, "Oh, we've got like a party in this place. Do you guys want to come along to it?" And we're in shorts and t-shirts. Like I'm wearing a Guru shirt. Like we're hungover. We're all over the place. We're like, yeah, sure, we'll come and have a look at it. So he gives us like 3 passes and he says like, "Oh, it's on level 66 or whatever," or something like that. And we're like, yeah, okay, sure. So we finished our dinner. We thought, oh, we'll go check it out. So we walk over to the elevator, look at the options of the numbers. It only goes up to 65. We're like, 66? Like, is this a G up? Like, are we
getting robbed?
Yeah, like this. What's going on? Anyway, then we look over like in the corner, and there's this very nice elevator. It's like kind of almost made of gold kind of stuff, and just on the top it says 66. And it's not like a press the button to open; it's a scan, which we had the thing, and we're like, oh, okay, that must be us. So we walk over, we scan it, go in, and most beautiful elevator I've ever been in. And, you know, in the elevator, how there's normally like all the numbers you can press. It just had 66 and that was it, which took you to the top level. Anyway, we walk in and we're like, and we have got no idea what we're getting ourselves into. No idea whatsoever. We've just got this pass. We'll go up there. So anyway, press 66, the door starts to close. And as the door gets to close, you know, like when you're trying to keep an elevator open, like you put your hand in it or something. The biggest hand I've ever seen emerges in this elevator. And me and Tom and Eddie are like, oh, and it opens back
Willie
up.
Mason?
It was Brian Fletcher and Matty Johns. So Fletch and Matty Johns get in. And like, well, I've met them in passing here and there and whatnot, but they're still like absolute idols of mine. Like I absolutely love those guys. So there we are, the 5 of us just in an elevator going up. And as I said, at this point, we didn't know where we were going. And I'm like, okay, if Matty Johns is up here, we must be going to there must be some people upstairs. Anyway, I opened the door and it was like Vlandy's private party. This penthouse room looking over the entire of Las Vegas. And it's one of those moments where I've just stood there and gone, how on earth have I ended up here? Like, so uncomfortable in there. The vast majority of people in the room didn't have the slightest clue who I was. Probably assumed I'd snuck in there or weaseled my way in there, which I had, to be fair. But just being in those sort of rooms and just standing there looking over Las Vegas in a penthouse room with, like, Murdochs were in there. And, like, it was just bizarre. That's probably the biggest one for me I was there. I actually
Who else was up in that penthouse?
Like all of like the Fox League commentators and stuff. But then there was like me, Tom, Eddie, NRL Roast was there too. He was already there, so I walked in. I'm like, "What the hell are you doing here?" And it's a big running joke that me and him look like the same human being and whatnot. So we sort of just all of us had this moment where and as I said, like we're in shorts and t-shirt. There's Vlandy's in his suit, and the Murdochs in their suits and everything, and this beautiful place. And it's just like, how on earth did this happen? Like I was going for a hungover dinner 15 minutes ago. now I'm looking over Las Vegas in this penthouse room at this party with all these people worth all this money in the world. But then it was amazing, like the amount of people that come up that just say, "Oh, I listened to the podcast, good to have you," and everything. And it was just crazy. And then like 2 days later, I'm standing on the field at Allegiant Stadium waiting for the NRL to kick off. The Super Bowl was there 2 weeks before. Pat Mahomes won a Super Bowl on that field 2 weeks before that, and we're standing there I walked over to like where Fox had like their commentary panel at like their desk, and I remember I walked over there and like I took a video of me like standing there saying, "Oh, sorry, Kempy, I'm not coming home," or something. "I'm staying here." And I looked down at my chair and it had a little tag on it that said Brady. So when they were doing the analysis, that's where Tom Brady had sat 2 weeks ago. It was just insane. Like, I never thought the Instagram page would ever, like, I was excited. Like, I still remember where I was when I got my 1,000th follower and how excited I was.
It's only a few years before.
Yeah, for sure, mate. 100%.
Like, it was like your mum's friend winning the lottery. It was just like from zero to bam.
Yep, for sure.
Because other people, it takes people 40 years, a whole generation to go from.
Yep. And that's where, mate, it's been a whirlwind. And, as you said, it takes people 40 years, a generation to do that. And most of the time, they are just having to work to the bone and do things they hate. And I've been so blessed. The hardest thing I've had to do is watch a lot of games of footy. Like, it's sort of a weird position to be in, that it's almost like you hear people talk about like imposter syndrome. Like, for me, I'm the king of imposter syndrome. I'm the worst footy player you could ever find. I've never played a game of first grade. Yet I put out these podcasts expecting people to listen to my opinions.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. Like, even last week, like, I got invited onto James Graham's podcast. I'm sitting there with James Graham, like, he's listening to my opinion and taking it in. I'm like, you've played 500 games of footy. You're one of the toughest guys to ever play our game. And I'm sitting here, like, sharing an equal opinion with you. Like, that imposter syndrome is
what a good bloke he is, isn't he?
Oh, mate, an absolute legend, absolute champion. Like,
just respect.
Got so much time for Jimmy. Absolute legend. It was funny, like, even when I was over in Las Vegas, he was there as well. And we had to go and pick up like our accreditation pass in the days leading up to the game. So I went to the stadium. That stadium is enormous, as everything is in America, but that stadium is unbelievable. It's huge. And I couldn't work out which door I had to go to get this accreditation because we'd been given little to no information about it. And I'm walking around this stadium. I'd done like 2 laps by this point, which is like a 50-minute walk around this thing. It's enormous. I was like, I have no idea, but I need to get this pass. Anyway, I'm doing a lap and I see in the distance a guy walking and he's doing these ones and looking around. I'm going, I don't know who this is, but he's definitely lost. It was James Graham. So I ended up going on like this hour walk together through Las Vegas trying to find these things. And once again, like, he's a legend of the game.
He is.
Owes me nothing. If I walked into him that day at Las Vegas and went, "Hey, mate," and kept walking, didn't say another word to me, I'd be like, yeah, no, that's fair. Like, that's 100% fair and warranted. But he's always been very good to me, as have all the players and all the people involved in rugby league. Like, I met a lot of the journos over in Las Vegas for the first time, and guys like Buzz and stuff that just, they get so much hate. He had all the time in the world. He didn't have the slightest clue who I was, but he just saw I had the accreditation thing and I was in there and I was young and I was just doing my best, and he was fantastic to me.
You know what I've always wondered? What would happen if the Americans played NRL? Because they just seem to be monsters. Like, look at the NFL athletes. They're sitting at the 130s.
Yeah, but I also think we underappreciate our athletes.
Yeah.
Big time. Because, yeah, those guys are enormous. They're big bits of gear. I get it. But they also, their plays go for 6 seconds. Then they have a 40-second break. They plan it all out. It's a game of chess. And they go again for 6 seconds. Our dudes go for 80 minutes. They play attack and defense. They don't just play one of them. And they don't stop the entire time. I personally think, I love the NFL and everything, but if anyone wants to tell me there's a tougher sport in the world than NRL,
that's settled. That's settled.
Yeah,
100%.
I think, and even in America when we were over there, watching the Americans work out that when they hand the ball over, people don't come off.
What was happening in that crowd in Vegas? Like, were there Americans? Was it Aussies?
It was mostly Aussies. It was mostly Aussies. I'm not going to lie. There was Americans there. It was hard for me too, mate, because I was in like a media area, so I could have my laptop and work during it. So I went for like a walkthrough with the people. It was actually interesting. There was a lot of English Super League fans there. A lot of English people had come over. So this year coming, there's 2 English teams that are actually playing.
Oh, good.
So I'm very keen to see how many Pommies come over because, mate, there was, I reckon, like 10 to 20% last year were English fans because it's a much shorter flight.
Yeah.
And they just sort of went, oh, we'll just come for a
weekend. And they're diehard, aren't they?
Oh, mate, they are absolute diehards.
You know what? You got the hooligans there.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I come from a soccer background, and when I go to Greece and in come the flares, you know, I know the Aussie culture, there's big band, lifetime ban if a flare goes off. But I think it's cool. I wouldn't mind the hooligans coming in. There's a passion, there's a something. You know, see, don't hurt anyone, but I like it. I like it.
Yeah, and mate, I'm so rugby league dominated. Like, I don't even understand that world, to be honest with you. And that, like, even when I see the flares and stuff, personally, I know I'm an old man yelling at a cloud, but I go, fuck, that's a bit much, isn't it? Because it's just not the culture I'm used to.
Yeah, yeah.
But mate, over there, like, it was cool. Like, there was Americans just couldn't believe how brutal it was and how quick it was and how
it would have been funny to sit next to an American.
Mate, it was like they are just genuinely shocked that it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And like the fact that, and like we're getting into a scary time with like CTE and everything, but to consider that our sport is, you know, you guys stand 15 meters apart and run at each other as hard as you can 400 times in a game. Like, that's unbelievable. And that you could see it on the Americans' faces just going, what is wrong with these guys? And like to them work out, like the other thing as well, like they have, you know, first quarter, second, like we just have a break at halftime and that's it. Then they go back out and they do it again.
Yeah, it's another level. You know, a mate was telling me, talking about how brutal the NRL players, and you look back at the
sorry, mate.
we look back at the you know, Warriors on the front line. They had the Spartans back then. You'd have the tough, brutal, relentless guy. I mean, that would have been the NRL players. Like that was a personality right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Just animals.
Yeah,
just want blood.
And it's so, like, mate, that's exactly what I did when I was thinking last week when I was sitting next to James Graham. Like, you would have been leading from the front back in those days, 100%.
James Graham, you would have been a Spartan.
Yeah, 100%. It would have been a Spartan. Yeah.
He's probably not going to watch this.
But I think as well, like, we look at rugby league, we see it all the time, and I think we sort of just take for granted how brutal it actually is and how much these guys are putting their bodies through. And, you know, you hear these incredible stories about, you know, like Cooper Cronk in the grand final and whatnot. And like, it's incredible. It's unbelievable. But mate, like, from being in my chair and talking to people at clubs, like, it happens every weekend. But to them, that's just their world and that's what they do.
Oh, when Sam Burgess fractured his cheekbone when he should have been taken off, the doggy should have won that one. Come on.
Fair. Once again, James Graham. Like, another, like, even in that moment, like James Graham once again, like, yeah, it's an unbelievable sport that I think sometimes here in Australia we sort of take for granted just how brutal and tough it is. And like, and that's where nothing annoys me more than, you know, the game's getting soft. Please. It's the most brutal sport in the world with stronger, faster, and bigger athletes than it's ever had. You try and tell me the game's gone soft? Please.
That's true. I mean, you do get excited with a bit of beef.
Yeah.
You do. But at the end of the day, too, I mean, they're without the biff, without the kickoff, the run at heart, without all of that, it's still insane.
Mate, it's like, and I get, like, I'm a traditional as well. I would hate the kickoff to go. I get it 100%. But
do you reckon it'll go?
Eventually, yeah, without a doubt.
How would it start in a scrum? What do you start?
Tap. Whatever. Tap. Like, the NFL's already changed their rules. Have you sort of seen that?
I haven't. So just tap, eh?
Not tap. Well, they've changed their rules that like you used to kick off from I think the 40-yard line, and where you kick from, your players will start chasing from there.
Yeah.
Now what they do, the kicker starts at the 40-yard line, the team's on the 30-yard line.
Okay, got it.
So they kick over here, so to take away some of that impact.
Mm.
It looks very strange, but 3 years ago, there's 32 NFL teams. They went to the coaches and said, "Who wants to do this?" 29 said yes, because they're so worried about like CTE and all that.
Yeah, well, when you hear, listen to James Graham and his concerns, your heart breaks, because it's like the Colosseum. I mean,
Yep.
The crowd wants to see blood, but there's a cost. There's families. There's
a huge cost that the bloke sitting in a pub saying the game's sauce doesn't impact his family in 30 years' time. And that's what annoys me. The bloke on social media, it doesn't impact his family. It doesn't have an effect on his kids in 30 years' time, whereas these guys, it does. And these guys make a decision that they know the risks, and reality is with these guys, like they're just different humans.
Yeah.
Like you have to be to play rugby league. It's a brutal sport.
Yeah.
It is. Like I look at guys that are my age that are still going to play an A grade, show up to work on Monday morning where they're doing much harder jobs than mine, and their bodies are just in pieces. And I look at that and I go, like, we're so used to it in Australia that, everyone plays footy. Playing footy is an extraordinary thing. How much you have to put your body through constantly to get yourself to a point where you can even just play the game. And the injuries you go through and everything, it's unbelievable. And you look at these guys, these incredible athletes in the NRL and whatnot, how many of them have their careers cut short because of injury?
Yeah.
And they spend 10 years, diet's perfect, all the training, all the rehab, everything, and still their bodies aren't able to sustain it. Like I feel like the writing's on the wall for just how brutal this sport is and how stupid a comment the game's gone soft is.
Yeah.
People just seem to constantly ignore it.
No, it's true. And hearing it from yourself too. I mean, you watch every single game. How long have you been watching every single game for?
I would have, ever since I've been doing this, ever since I've been on Bloke in a Bar, we watch every single game. Like, mate, we do a 30-minute review of every game every Monday. Wow. So I can't get away with not watching it.
Yeah, you can't make it up. Like kid in class.
And
have you read the book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like for you as a Bulldogs fan, I could maybe get away with making up that I watched the Tigers game because you wouldn't have watched it.
Yeah.
But you will know if I'm lying about watching the Bulldogs game.
Yeah.
You'll know if I'm talking out of my ass or not, whether I've sat there and watched the 80 minutes and not looked at stats or highlights, because you understand the ebbs and flows of that game. Yeah. And you know when you're listening to someone that hasn't watched the game. I do it all the time. I listen to the guys on Fox League and stuff that are on these big shows, and I listen to the comments. I'm like, I know you didn't watch the game.
Yeah. Well, what is your strike rate of picking a win in a season?
Oh, mate, not great. Mate, it's the hardest sport in the world.
What is it? Like, I'm curious. Is like a 30%, 40%? I'm just because it's an unpredictable sport, right?
Yeah, I reckon I'd probably be sitting at 40, 45% maybe.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know. Like I go on a betting show every week, and like I won that this year, but I was in the negative of that. But that's also like when you're betting on every game, you're not just betting on a coin toss. Like you're throwing in try scorers and all this sort of stuff. The bigger ones for me that have really moved the needle for me are some of the young guys that I've picked out before anyone really knows them, and they've turned out to be good players. Like I've had probably one of my bigger ones was Ruben Cotter, who's now playing for Australia and stuff. Like he would have been 21 or 22, I think it was. And I said in the preseason, like everyone was bringing out their predicted teams 1 to 17, and Ruben Cotter wasn't in most Cowboys teams. And I said that year, I reckon he'll get into the Cowboys team, and I think he'll play for Queensland. And at the time, it was outrageous. I got absolutely smashed from pillar to post on social media. Everyone gave it to me. Anyway, he made his debut for Queensland that year. And it just sort of came from nowhere. And I think that was sort of a bit of a turning point for me. Oh, okay. He might not have played, but he kind of knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, and just asking for a mate, but anyone in the reserves for the Dogs, which you I think might come to the asking for a mate.
Right, you're in a very good spot at the moment, Canterbury.
Yeah,
got a lot of good people at your club that you've brought there, like players, obviously, but you've got a lot of good people in your systems and whatnot that are doing a lot of really smart people. Like obviously guys like Phil Gould are there, but then a mate of mine who was a player agent not too long ago, he's just gone in there, so he sees it from a different perspective.
Because you don't hear you hear all the signings,
Yeah,
but you're not hearing. Like, I remember other years with the Dogs, you'd hear, "Oh, this guy's going to come through." But now there's all these kind of superstars that come in. It's kind of diluted those. There's got to be superstar reserves.
yeah. You guys are in a very good. You've been very successful in junior grades over the last few years. Like you've got a halfback coming through, Mitch Woods.
Mitch Woods.
Yeah,
Okay.
You heard that name?
I haven't, and I'm a Doggies fan. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and I think this is what I'm also careful with is that like you don't want to hype these guys up too much. Well, they're too young because like Mitch is, he's, I think he got Harold Matthews under 16s Player of the Year. Then he went straight to SG Ball, which means he was a year young, and he got Player of the Year there as well. So very rarely do you see that. He's a very talented kid. You got plenty of guys at Canterbury, and you've got a good system there at the moment. It's just, I think this year is going to be crucial for you guys because you have a look at the history of the comp over the last few years, the amount of teams that come from the bottom 8 into the top 8 and then drop back out the year after.
Don't tell me that.
Well, I actually think you guys can buck the trend, but yeah, it's hard. Like you've got your Roosters, your Penrith, your Melbourne that make it look easy staying at the top.
Yeah.
And even your Sharkies are getting into that sort of category now. But you have a look at like over the last few years, every single year for the last 5, been 2 teams that have come from the bottom 8 into the top 8, and then they drop back out.
This is turning into a footy podcast. This is Stories Unlocked. This is a story of your life.
I've got you right where I want you.
Yeah, this is we're going there, but gosh, wrapping it up. One piece of advice you'd give to a 10-year-old self. You've only got one piece.
It sounds so basic and stupid, but just have a crack. Just have a crack at anything. Like, when I first started this thing, for me to think I was, once again, a guy that has never played first grade football, was a dreadful player, to be able to sit like last week with James Graham and share my opinion with him, and all that. And I get people that comment on screen all the time, like, why should I listen to you? I know more about footy than you. And I'm like, okay, bro, go do it. No one's stopping you. You want people to listen to you, go and do 6 years worth of work that I've done. Go and put all those hours in and all that sort of stuff. And it's easy to say, oh, I know more than you, and you probably do. But if you're not going to put that time in, have a red hot crack at doing it, respectfully, just shut up.
Mm.
And I think that people are.
Was that the reply?
No, it wasn't. I've typed it about 1,000 times and go, no, that's petty. Get rid of that. But it is like, why do I have to listen to you? You don't.
Yeah.
No one's forcing you to.
This is social media. Everyone's a hero.
It's bizarre though. Like I get comments like that all the time, and I'm like, if you're sitting at home and you're watching something on TV, do you yell at it or do you change the channel? Like it's just, social media is so bizarre in that regard.
It's a good one.
But yeah, that'd be and it sounds so simple, and you're probably looking for something more profound. You wouldn't have a crack on a wall, but just have a go at things. The worst thing that can happen is it fails, and how bad is that going to be? The worst thing that can happen is someone says no. How bad can that be realistically?
Yeah, well, I think all in all, it was pleasure hearing your story. I mean, growing up, you had the adversity and anxieties of overcoming that massive stutter that you had to deal with. You came through school, and when you got out, you never chased a dollar. You don't give yourself enough credit, but you went and you helped, took on a job in teaching and helping in the disability world, which to outside society is an extreme thing, and you did that. That's open heart. I think later on, just through your authenticity, people gravitated towards yourself. But it wasn't just the authenticity; it was yourself putting in the sheer hours and dedication and consistency alongside not selling yourself out to very easily commercialize yourself. You stood true to yourself, and it'll be amazing to run this podcast back in about 10 years time, and just to see what part of the journey you're on, because I get the feeling it's just the start.
Yeah, it's exciting.
For the Rugby League Guru.
Yeah, so it's actually, when people ask me, "Oh, what does it look like in 5 years, 10 years?" Like, I don't know what it looks like in 6 months. I didn't know what it was going to look like 6 months ago. Like, it just goes day to day. Rugby league never stops. The fans never stop. So we just keep trucking along and see where we end up.
Lovely. Well, you just stay authentic, keep doing you, and you're destined for great. I'm going to shake your hand.
Cheers, mate. Appreciate it.
Awesome, man. That was good. That was good, man. That's a wrap.
Kicked your camera over at one point there.